All right, so thank you everybody for joining me today. We are going to be taking a look at how you manage the GW Drupal homepage. As I mentioned already, we have a number of things to work through today, so let's go ahead and get started. So our agenda today, we're going to be taking a look at this from two perspectives. The first perspective is kind of how you plan out the content that's going to go onto your homepage, and then we're actually going to go ahead and get into the back end of a GW Drupal website to kind of show you some of the steps you need to take to make updates to your homepage. And we are going to attempt to look at both a standard or classic GW Drupal site with which the majority of you are on, and we'll also take a look at the back end of an editorial theme site. So if you do have questions along the way, feel free to put them into the chat window or to wait towards the end of the session, and we will have a question and answer portion at that time. So you can put your questions into the chat window and I'll answer them at that time. You can also, when we do open it up to questions, take yourself off of mute and ask your question over the phone if you would like. So the first thing to keep in mind when you need to make updates to your homepage is really how well you're planning that content out. It kind of goes without saying, but the homepage of your website should be building and maintaining trust for your users. So what we mean by that is you need to be honest about who you are and what you do as an office, and your content should reflect that. You really shouldn't be confusing your website visitors by trying to own somebody else's content. Because that can put you in a position where you're trying to be the subject matter expert on something that you're not, and it could also create a negative user experience for your users. So you should always be honest about who you are and what you do as an office, and make sure that your website content reflects that. You also want to be making sure that you're following GW standards, so making sure you're complying with the visual identity standards and guidelines, and using the appropriate fonts and colors and things along those lines, and not kind of going and doing something external, because that consistency also fosters familiarity and trust. Our users don't have to worry when they're going from website to website, is this a real GW thing, or is this something that somebody's just kind of doing and putting GW's name on it? You never want to have your website visitors having to ask themselves that question. So staying in line with the standards and guidelines, again, fosters that familiarity and trust, and they don't even have to think about it. Another thing you want to make sure you're always doing is making sure that your website content on your homepage is accurate and up to date, because that outdated content can also cause distrust about the integrity of the rest of the content in your website. So that can be something from a dated item like articles and events. If you have an article up on your website that has last year's date stamp on it, that can actually lead people to believe you haven't actually touched your website in that long, and that might be false, but it can lead to that assumption. And the same thing goes for if you have content on your homepage that's seasonal. We're in May now, so if you have content on your homepage touting a new thing from fall 2016, that can also kind of lead to some hesitation on your website visitors and wondering, are they actually keeping this website up to date? Should I just call and not even worry about going through the website? So you always want to make sure if you're putting dated or seasonal material on your homepage, that you're keeping that information up to date. You also want to make sure that you're always assessing the usefulness of the content on your homepage. So who is the content speaking to? Your site should always have one primary audience, and then you can have lower priority audiences that the rest of your content is speaking to. And when we say you should have one primary audience, it should be pretty targeted. So rather than just saying students, it should say something along the lines of international students or prospective students. It should be really targeted so that you can make sure that your content is also targeted toward those users. And your main content pieces on your homepage should be speaking to that primary audience, whereas lower priority things can have presence on the homepage as well, but they shouldn't be taking up those really big marquee places on your homepage. And this should go without saying, but you should never focus homepage content on somebody else's audience. So if somebody comes to you and says, we need you to help us market this thing, can you please put it up on your homepage, and it really has nothing to do with what your office does, and it's not speaking to either your primary or secondary audiences, it's really not a good idea to put that up on your homepage, because for one, those audiences, they're not going to come to you anyway, because they're not, they're not looking at your website to help them get the task that they need done. but then you're also going to confuse your website visitors who you actually have built the site for. They're going to see this up there and wonder, why is this here? It's not going to help me get anything done. I don't know why this is here. Maybe this isn't where I need to be. So again, make sure your content is speaking to your audience. Make sure your content is also actionable and that action is clear and concise. You should never have to have somebody call you up because you had something on your homepage and they weren't sure how to follow through, or if the item on your homepage is a dead end, meaning that it doesn't have an action, there's nothing to click on, nowhere to go. That's also not useful for your website visitors. So again, that can lead to a situation where the website didn't provide them the avenue that they needed to get a task done, and so they ended up having to call your office anyway, which you might have also wanted to avoid as well. So content on your homepage should never be a dead end. It should always click somewhere else, and you want to make sure that it's also supporting one of your targeted business goals or one of your targeted communication goals, and that it's not an action that's too broad in scope for what your website visitors need to do. So at this point, you're probably thinking, I've done all of that stuff, I'm ready to go, I want to get some stuff in Drupal, I'm ready to create a promotion, whatever the case might be, but you really should stop and think before you do that and make sure that you do some really deep thinking about it, and also start writing out what's going to go on your homepage before you actually log into Drupal and try and do something. So an important thing to keep in mind is that you're always going to have to cut information down on your homepage because it should be really quick, clear, and concise, as we were saying before. So what's the most concise way that you can say what you need to say to make your point? How can you use visuals to help get your point across? Think about whether or not your subpage content is ready to go before you ever touch your homepage. This goes back to how your homepage should never be a dead end. If you're linking to something deeper into your site, that subpage that you're linking to needs to be polished and ready to go before anything goes up on your homepage. And you also never want to put something up where it's like coming soon, new program or new thing, just because that kind of puts the onus, well, not kind of, it puts the onus on your website visitors to keep in mind that this new thing is coming and to make a point to come back. And the probability of that happening is actually pretty low. And so you just have to keep in mind you only have, one chance to make a first impression, so you need to go out there strong. So make sure that you have all of your information and all of your visuals ready to go, that you create that subpage content first and that it's polished and ready to go. Or if you're linking externally to somebody else's site, that where you're sending your website visitors to is actually useful. If they still have to call you up to figure out, okay, I went to that website, but I don't know what to do, then that content wasn't useful that you linked them to. So making sure that if it's your subpage, it's polished and ready to go. If it's somebody else's subpage, that it gives your website visitors the information that they need to follow through. And then you want to update your homepage. And the final point on this particular slide is don't let other sites drive your decisions. And by that, we just mean that we often hear, I saw this thing on another website. Maybe you saw it on Duke or one of our other Market Basket sites, or maybe you saw it on another GW site. And while we always, love hearing great new ideas, we just want you to keep in mind your audience and what you need to do from a business goal and from a communication goal. You don't know why this other office did what they did. And more importantly, you don't know if it was successful. So you never want to inadvertently copy a new feature or a style that ultimately was poorly performing from another website just because you thought it looked good. So you don't have the information to know that. You don't know if it performed well, basically. So you don't want to copy that in that case. And again, you also want to. I'm sorry, if you can actually put your phones and computers on mute just to make sure that we don't have any background interference, that would really help for the other attendees on the call today. I hope you guys can hear. I'm sorry about that. I can't get the other person's attention. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so the next thing that you need to keep in mind for planning the content on your website is making sure that you're avoiding any content danger zones. And so one of the biggest ones that we often see is print posters on the website being used as the main content. And you actually want to make sure that you're not doing that. For one thing, the text is inaccessible for users with visual disabilities. That includes not only users who are completely blind, but also users who might have a color blindness that they're dealing with. So you want to make sure that you're not using the print posters for that. because they might not actually be able to read it. There are alternate text fields on images, and what those alternate text fields are for is to make sure that if it's a photo, that you're actually describing what's going on in the photo. And in the case of any kind of print that might be on the graphic or design, you actually need to be indicating all of the text that's in that graphic in the alternate text field. So if you're using a PDF or a poster as your main image, then all of the text that's in that PDF or that poster is actually supposed to go into that alternate text field. And that's a cumbersome thing for you to do as a content manager, and it's also cumbersome for your website visitors who might be relying on screen readers to read those alt text fields aloud to them. So you want to make sure that you're not using your print and PDF posters as the main content or the main image for those reasons, because it's inaccessible to them. Additionally, that text is unreadable on mobile devices. It gets scaled down and becomes really small and tiny, so they actually can't see it. So that's another reason why print posters don't work well as the main website content. And then that final bullet where it says print design doesn't scale well on websites, what we mean by that is that the method behind designing something for print and the method behind designing something for a website, they're two completely different mediums, and they have completely different methods behind them. They don't even use the same measurements, like the literal scale, to be designed. So something that was designed for print to be like a nice big poster, which is huge, versus something that was designed to be on a website, which is going to be much smaller. They don't scale well between the two of them. So you never just want to take something that was provided to you to be a poster and to take that electronic file, whatever type it may be, and throw that up on your website, because it's not going to scale to optimal dimensions, and it's not going to scale well and just look as nice, basically. You also want to avoid using too many moving pieces. Too much motion is visually distracting, and this can be an issue not for somebody who's not dealing with a disability, but if somebody actually has a cognitive disability, it can be very difficult for them to absorb the information on your website if a lot of the pieces and parts are moving, as well as somebody with a visual disability. You really want to make sure that you're balancing the elements on your home page between pieces that are moving and pieces that are static and just sits there. The rotating content also gets pretty low click rate, so you might not be getting the return on your investment of the time you put into putting all of this content behind all of these rotating elements, because your users could actually be moving or be missing that content, especially if you have something important and let's say it's in the 4th or 5th rotation on a rotating element. Your users could actually miss that because they didn't wait around to see that 4th or 5th item come through the rotation, and that problem gets exacerbated if they have, to look at 3 or 4 different things that have rotation going on them. So again, avoid having too many moving pieces going on your website, and just make sure that you're balancing out what those items are. You also want to make sure that you don't have excessive white space on your home page. This can actually make your home page look like it's unbalanced, and in some cases look like it's unfinished or poorly maintained. So basically it can look like there are formatting mistakes if you have maybe an intro paragraph at the top of your homepage, and then you have a ton of white space, and then beneath that maybe you have some graphics or a feed of some kind going, but you have all of that awkward white space in between. That can lead your users to think that it was, poorly done, or the site just looks unbalanced, or maybe that additional content doesn't come until past the scrolling point, either on their phone or on their desktop, and they might think there's actually nothing more on the website since there's all of that white space. So you want to make sure that you keep things balanced, that you don't have excessive white space, so that visitors to your homepage can get an idea of all of the information that you're trying to present to them. And then finally, you want to make sure that there isn't too much text or too many visuals going on, just because this can be overwhelming for your users, and also because your homepage should be drawing users deeper into your site and not presenting everything up front. We often will see things along the lines of, a letter from a director or a dean or something along those lines, which is great information, but then the homepage doesn't present additional information or additional actions for the user to take. And so there's no way to know if your site visitors are even reading that much text, because they're coming to your website and your homepage because they have an action that they need to do. So you don't know if you're actually getting a lot of benefit of having all of that text on the homepage, or if people are just skipping over it entirely and then using their search bar or the navigation to just go to wherever it is they need to go. So you want to be making sure that all of the content on your homepage is actionable. There's not too much text so that people can quickly see the kind of services or offerings that you have on your website and then click into those things to actually get deeper into your website and do what they need to do. And then with the images, not only is it just visually overwhelming in some cases, but it's also important to keep in mind that for mobile, the more images that you have on your homepage, the slower it's actually going to load, because it's going to just take, especially if you're on a pretty poor network, which I think plenty of us can attest to having been on before, it's going to take that much longer for your homepage to load if it's overloaded with images. So just keep that in mind when it comes to how you're planning to put images on your homepage. So those are all of the content strategy tips that we kind of wanted to go over with you guys today, but now we want to actually go ahead and log into the back end and take a look at how you could update your homepage from an implementation standpoint. And we're going to start with a classic Drupal site. So hopefully you're still with me and you can see my screen. So I'm going to go ahead and get logged in, and we're going to do a handful of things here. The first thing that we're going to do is feature a new promotion on the homepage. So a lot of people make the mistakes when they get to their homepage. They want to see an edit button, just click that edit button and then quickly make an update to whatever it is on the homepage that they want to edit. But you have to remember your homepage should be giving teasers of deeper content in your site. So you never want to come to the homepage and click edit. Instead, you want to find the content that it is that you want to update. So in this case, maybe I want to take this green promotion down and put up a different one. So what I need to do is go to the back end of my site, and I'm going to click on my workbench, and then go to all recent content and click that view all link. And from here, I'm going to filter my content list that we see here by promotion so that I can just see the promotions that are up here now. For this green promotion that I no longer want to see, I'm going to click edit. I'm going to scroll all the way down, and we can see that it has a site placement value of home. And this, the classic GW Drupal theme, is what tells your site, what tells your system that this item needs to be featured on my homepage. And in some cases, it tells your system, this is an item that I want to be globally distributed across my homepage, this home site placement value. So all you need to do when you want something to be removed from your homepage is go to that particular item and remove the home site placement value. I'm going to do that in this case by clicking Command and then clicking on Home right there. So we can see that it's no longer tagged. I'm going to publish those updates, click the Save button, and now when I go back to my home page, I can see that that green promotion is gone. It's still represented here because this is actually a content set that it has been placed into. So it's a completely separate content item, but that standalone green promotion that I just had in my sidebar, that's now gone because I removed that home site placement value. So now that that's gone, the next thing that I can do is go back to my content list, which is still filtered by promotion type. And let's say I want to put this Get More Info promotion up instead. I'm going to go click on the Edit link over there to the right, scroll down to my site placement section again, and I'm going to tag it for home. And now I'm going to go ahead and publish my update. And once I go back to my home page, now I can see that my new Get More Info promotion is there instead. And so that's the basic action that you need to take on any piece of content that you do want on your homepage or off your homepage. It's going to that item and then selecting the home site placement value to get it to show up on your homepage. Now, in the case of feeds on the homepage, if you have the default feeds for events and news, all you need to do is to create a new news or event item. And so I'm going to create an article. I'm actually going to borrow this article from GW Today. I'm going to grab their title. Paste that into my title field. And the steps that I'm taking right now are a really good way to curate articles from external sources. If you want to have a news feed, but you don't actually have the bandwidth to create your own articles, but you do have the bandwidth to curate them from specific sources, this is the best way to do it, to go to that source, grab their headline, maybe grab their subhead, and we don't need that to be that large, so I'm going to take that down to normal. Grab their subhead, use it as your body copy. You really only need a sentence or two, and that will serve as the summary on your own website. Set whatever your release date is. I'm going to go ahead and leave today's date and time there. And then in this case, I'm going to grab the link to the article page from GW Today, scroll all the way down to this offsite link field, and just put that in to the link URL and title field. And then I'm going to do two things here. I'm going to tag it for home, and then I'm going to hold down my command button, also tag it for news and events, for my news and events section for my article. And then I'm just going to publish that. Oops, I forgot to pick a subtitle. Make sure you have all of your required fields filled in, and then go ahead and click Save. And once this refreshes, we'll go to our home page. And we can now see that my news feed has been updated with that article. And that's because for the home page news and event feed, really whenever you create an article, it should automatically show up there, but you can also tag it with that home site placement value, and that additional step will ensure that it gets pre-populated into that news and event feed in whichever sidebar that it's actually in. Something else that we often hear our users say to us is that, you know, I've got this message up on my home page, I need to edit it, I came to the home page and I couldn't do it. That's because, again, this should be clicking into a subpage deeper in your site. In this case, we have this read more link, so I can just click on that to get to the detail page, which is the about page. And then once I get to the about page, I can click on new draft, and I can make updates to the text, whatever I need them to be. And now that I've got that updated text, I can scroll down. You can just publish and change and then go back to the home page. And, oh, you know what? I bet that this is actually using our summary. So I'm actually back on the About page. I'm going to go back into New Draft. I changed the body text, but you can see here the summary field up at the top is actually what's filled in. Whenever you fill in the summary field, this is the text that's going to show on your home page, and in some cases in feed if you choose that instead. So this is a custom summary field. Displaying on my home page. And so now when I publish and save my changes, the summary text that we see and that welcome message on the home page should get updated as well. So if you ever find that you've made a text to the body and it didn't get reflected either on your home page or in a feed as expected, go back and check to see if that summary field has text in it instead, and overwrite whatever that text is or make the update that you need to make, and then you should see it reflected as we do here. And the last task that I'm going to do here in the standard site before we move into editorial is to show you how you can add or remove a banner from your hero content set. So I'm going to go to my workbench, my content, and all recent content, and I'm going to filter my list by content set. And the reason why I'm doing that is for the rotating hero on the home page, that is always driven by a content set. We can see here I've got one called hero set, and within it, my local brand is represented as well as the 3 heroes that are currently displaying in the rotating hero. So if I want to add a new one, I always have to find that hero content set and make the edits to that. It's not a matter of going to the individual heroes, it's a matter of going to the hero content set. And just as we talked about earlier before, I need to always make sure that my content is ready to go and polished before I ever try and make any updates. So I already have the hero, that banner that's ready to go for the home page, and it's called a large green hero. And so I'm going to start typing in the name of that into this field here, which is designed to look for pre-existing content, which you can tell by the little Drupal node reference circle at the end. And we can see that my large green hero is there. So all I need to do now is click on that to add it. You can see that it's already got a home site placement value, so that lets us know that it's designed to already show up on the home page. We're going to change my moderation status to published and save that. And then when I go to my home page, now I've got 4 banners on my home page, including my new green one. If I wanted to remove one of those heroes from my home page because I no longer needed it, I'm going to go back to my hero content set, click on New Draft, and maybe we don't need this cyan hero anymore, so I'm just going to delete the reference to that, publish, and save my change. And then again, we're down to 3, but now it's just the yellow, the lime, and the green hero. And so that's really all you need to do whenever you need to make updates to your home page, is to make sure that the item that you're editing is polished and ready to go, and that you are applying the home site placement value to get it to show up appropriately, and that you're not using the home site placement value as a catch-all or a placeholder, because what you might end up with is having a bunch of promotions showing up in your sidebar that you don't want there, or some other content from deeper in your site that's been site placed to the home page just as a catch-all because you couldn't really determine what a better site placement value term for it was at that moment, and then inadvertently in the future you end up with that item on your home page. I'm going to go ahead and move over to the editorial theme. We can see here that we've got a pretty simple editorial theme homepage going on, but we want to add some additional things to it. So I'm going to go ahead and get logged into the back of this site as well. And I see now that we're at 2 o'clock. If you need to drop off, I'll still share the presentation with you, but I am going to keep going. Hopefully the rest of you can stay with me, and I'll make sure that I answer any questions that have been put into the chat box as well. So as soon as this logs us in, so on our editorial site, it's actually a much simpler matter to update our home page. It doesn't rely on site placement the way that the classic theme of GW Drupal does. Instead, it actually allows you to use this customize this page button and then directly add elements to your home page. So we're going to do 2 things here on the editorial site, which are the most common things. We're going to update the hero banner, and we're going to add a new slide to that. And then we're also going to add some more content to our home page. And we're going to do that first by clicking on this Customize This Page button. And typically when you're adding content to the home page of an editorial site, it's a general content page. And so in that case, what you want to do is make sure that you're adding your content to the appropriate region. This first region up here at the top, full bleed top, that's really the region designed for the hero banner space. And it's designed to be in some cases edge to edge, and in some cases, which we can see here, it's actually kind of just going very large across the full content area. So you don't want to actually drop things like page content into that, or text copy, or like you can see here, feed. You don't want that going into that larger hero space. Instead, you want to come to the region here called top, click the plus symbol, and in the case of a general content page, that's an existing node. And if you recall from the Drupal overview, a node is the technical term for any saved piece of content in the back end of your site. So you just click on that existing node option, and then at the very top here it says enter the title or node ID of your content. I have a page ready to go called Welcome to GW, so I can start typing in that title, and then I can just select that and uncheck this include node links or add comment and things along those lines. And then the other thing I want to do is to change my bill mode to full content. And then once I click on finish, I can see the page that I had ready to go. All of that content is getting dropped into my home page. All I have to do is click save, and it's ready to go. And so my home page is starting to come together a lot nicer because I had that content ready to go. It was polished and looks nice. I've got all of my images and text ready to go, and so I didn't have to really think on the fly about how I wanted to get it onto my home page, what I wanted it to look like, and what actions I wanted my users to take once it was up there. I planned all of that out ahead of time, and now I'm just ready to add it, so I can just go through the motions of using the Customize This Page button to do so. And now if I wanted to update my hero banner, just like you did on the classic theme, you want to update the content set with the hero banners in it. So in this case, I'm going to go to All Recent Content. I'm going to filter my content list here by content set. And then I can see that I've got a content set here called Full Bleed Heroes. And it's really just got the one that we're looking at right now, which is the Kogan Plaza. So if I click on New Draft, and I can see the Kogan Plaza here is represented, I can go into the next field for the new item and just look for the hero that I want to put in there. So in this case, it's called the Large Tempietto Hero. I'm going to start typing that in. And just like in the classic site, you'll get results that get pre-populated for you because, again, it's looking for pre-existing content. And I just need to publish and save that change. And once I go back to my home page, I can see, it's kind of hard to see on my screen. I hope you guys can see it better, but there are arrows off to the right and left of the hero banner letting you know that there's more than one going on in there. And you can click on them to get to the next one. I can't click on it on the other side. I've got a text module that's actually in the way of my arrow right now. But when you click on that, it will actually rotate through your hero banners for you so that you can get to that next additional slide that's in there. And also, like we did in the classic site, if you don't need this hero banner that's in here at the moment, you can go to your content set, click on New Draft, and delete the reference to the hero that you don't want, add in any new ones that you do want. I think that's the one I wanted. And publish and save your changes, and they will, again, get reflected on your home page. So that is all there is to making updates to the home page. I really do appreciate those of you who are still with me, sticking with me. If you do have any questions, now is the time to ask. Feel free to unmute yourself or put it into the chat box, and I'll be happy to answer. There's a question about whether everybody has to change to the new theme. The answer to that is no. The classic theme is still going to be around for some, indeterminable time at this point. It will get sunset at some point once the technology for it really does become obsolete, or perhaps it becomes operationally unsustainable to continue supporting it. The newer theme is more responsive out of the box for mobile devices. It's also more accessible out of the box for users who need to rely on the assistive devices. So at this point, when we do get new website projects, they automatically get put into the new theme. And if somebody has an existing classic site and they want to move into the new theme, we also support you in making that migration as well. Are there any other questions? All right, well, before I let you go, the last thing I'm going to show you, and this actually does apply to both the classic and the standard theme, if you ever get into a situation where content's not showing up on your home page as you expect it to, I'm going to go to the classic theme because it has a more dramatic effect on the classic theme. What you actually can do as a site administrator, and you'll know if you're a site administrator because you'll see all of these menu options here, is go to Homepage, you go to the structure, admin, and then you click on pages. And then you'll see a listing here for front page, and that's your home page. It's always going to say overwritten because we're always, you know, all making changes to our home page and adding different content themes to the home page to support the content that we need. Once you click on that edit link, and you then go to, everything's taking a while, the content menu item here, you can see here all of the content panes that are driving your home page. And by that I mean there are default content panes that are designed to hold specific types of content in the classic theme. It doesn't apply as much to the home, to the editorial theme since you're adding them at will, but in the classic theme, they're there by default. If something is not working appropriately, you can come to this section of the back end of your admin, and again, that's under structure, and then pages, and then click on content here. You can remove something one by one, or you can go over here to this revert link and click on that. What that will do is it will wipe out all of the customizations that have been done to the home page. So any custom feeds that have been added, such as Twitter, any changes that you've done as far as having one thing show in one sidebar and then moving it to the other, all of those changes will get wiped out and your home page will get reverted back to the default status with the large rotating hero, the news and event feeds in the default sidebar, so on and so forth. You can then go back in and make your changes as necessary. And this is sort of the last step option for troubleshooting issues on the home page. And once you do it, you can't undo it. So it's a good thing to know that you can do, but it's really the last step that you should take prior to other troubleshooting steps that you've taken before. So again, on the classic theme, it will reset your content panes to all of the default settings and configurations. On the editorial theme, it's going to remove everything because if you have used the editorial theme, you know that your home page is blank from the start and you actually have to go in there and manually add the items that you want there. So if you use this option in the editorial theme, it's going to take you back to having a completely blank home page. You won't have a hero banner, you won't have any body copy, you'll have nothing, and you have to start all over again. So again, this is a troubleshooting step you can take. It should be the last troubleshooting step that you can take. You should try smaller steps in between, but know that as a site administrator, you can do this. So that is all that I have today. Again, thank you all for being patient and staying with us. I will share the slides with you. I will share the video with you. And you are now free to enjoy the rest of your beautiful day before the bad weather kicks in. Thank you all.